Who are your 12 teams that are making the college football playoff this season?
My 12, my number 1 seed, Texas, 2 seed, Clemson, 3, Penn State, 4, Georgia, 5, Oregon, who would face off with 12, Toledo, 8, LSU, who would face off with 9, Ohio State, 7, Notre Dame, who would face off with 10, Miami, 6, Alabama, squaring off with 11, Texas Tech. Also, wait, before you jump in with yours, the current favorites on FanDuel to win the national championship, if anyone was wondering, Texas is at plus 550 with Georgia at plus 650 right behind them.
Penn State not far, along with Ohio State at plus 700 there too, Joe. All right, the real bracket. Here it is. All right, number 1, I have Georgia. Number 2, Penn State. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Texas. Number 5, Ohio State. Number 6, LSU. Number 7, Alabama. Number 8, Notre Dame. Number 9, Arizona State. And then coming in at number 10, I have Oregon. 11, I have 2 Big 12 teams getting into the playoff. Give me the Red Raiders, baby.
See, I got people in the chat telling me I got a bad bracket, and you're over here with 2 Big 12 teams. Sorry, continue.
Number 11, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And then I ended up with number 12, UNLV. Yeah, they're mad at you in the chat right now, but it's okay. They can make their own bracket. But, Joe, as we look at yours very quickly, when you look at all this, what are some key points that you want to get to here?
One of the main things I want to emphasize, I think that this is a 2-team race between Texas and Clemson. I've been saying this for some time now. Those are the 2 most talented rosters with the two of the best coaches in college football. I think Georgia is absolutely firmly going to be in the mix, but I think that Texas is just a slight hair above them. I think that the quarterback play is going to be better from Arch than it is from Gunnar Stockton, and that is the separation point for me. But on the Clemson side of things, Blake, I think more people need to take this Clemson team seriously. I think a lot of people assume how poorly they've played over the last couple of years, which is away from our normal expectation, makes us believe that they're going to be 10-2. They'll squeak their way in. Maybe they'll win the ACC. They have bona fide first-round picks all over their defense and a quarterback who could go first overall. A receiving unit that has 2 future first-rounders in Bryant Wesco for 2027 and Antonio Williams for 2026. This is one of the most gifted rosters, and I have a coach who's already won a national championship. Why wouldn't I pick that team to get there? So that's my big emphasis point with all of this. I think a lot of people are going to nitpick the specific seeding and placements of teams. There's going to be a lot of teams with similar resumes, and I think that this year the resumes are going to be a lot stronger. Last year's case was an aberration. We're not going to see that again.
Let's get to Clemson very quickly when you talk about them. I do think that there's some holes. When people talk about them, I feel like when I look, I see across the country, people have them at 1. I'm not disagreeing with having them there. But when we talk about them, saying that they have the best overall roster in the country is a little rich for me. Because that same front 7 returns, and the last time I saw them, they gave up close to almost 300 yards rushing. That's not scheme. It's not scheme. If you know offensive line run game play, it's not scheme when Peter Woods is getting pushed off the ball by a guy who was a backup guard that had to come into the game. Joe, be honest with you, that's 1v1 and one guy winning and the other not. Sammy Brown not being able to get off blocks against a center that had to come in the game.
A true freshman.
And
he's a true freshman. You're
okay.
expecting
he had 1 tackle for loss against ranked opponents a season ago. 1. So I do think that they are very, very, very talented. I agree with you. I think they're winning the ACC. I think they can get to the Final Four. Hell, they might even get to the big game. To act like that defense, who is very talented, doesn't have question marks coming off of what happened a season ago is a bit much. The most talented roster, I'm not there yet when I can turn on that Texas film and say, no, they're not. So I'm not going to go there with you and say that they're the most talented roster. They could be in the Final Four, Final 5, hell, even Final 6. There are things defensively they got to show. I think they can. They bring in a new DC. Things can instantly change for them. And we're like, oh, well, scheme did matter on this one. But, Joe, when you're running inside dive and you're getting your ass whooped, that ain't got nothing to do with scheme. So, again, I will just bring up, I see a lot of people talking about them. I agree. Wide receiver room, quarterback. Joe, what are they going to do in their own run game? You're converting a wide receiver. You're trying to get a true freshman ready. Sounds good. Maybe you get by against LSU and you can get by LSU in doing that when you're putting Randall and those guys in the running game. When you get in the playoffs, you can't do that to some of these physical teams like Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame, etc. It's not going to be acceptable if you got to go Bama against those teams. You can't do that.
I completely disagree with you on the notion that their defense can't be vastly better right from the jump.
Hold on. I literally said that they can be.
Okay.
What I'm saying is to act like they don't have questions when they just gave up 300 yards rushing, but it's a bit much for me.
But this isn't a circumstance. There are plenty of rosters, I think, in college football that are just in the general playoff mix that have talent questions. Clemson, to me, does not have a talent question. I've said on this show, I had a former Clemson player that I spoke to, and I asked him, what do you think of the transition of defensive coordinators? What do you think about that? And he said that he didn't think the last guy who was there when he played there, he did not think that he was getting the job done. He didn't think that he was preparing the guys on a week-by-week basis effectively enough, nor were they maximizing their talents to be the most successful. You can't obviously out-scheme situations where you're getting blown off the ball, but I don't think that this is purely that being the only reason why they got ran all over a number of times last year. They have one of the most gifted defensive line units in terms of pure talent in the country. I am not saying that they have the best defensive line in the country. I am not saying that they have the best overall roster in the country. Mm-hmm. But the group of guys that they have with Tom Allen leading that group, I think that they're going to be locked in and ready to go. And one of the things that I'd like to last point out that I was reading is the simplicity of that defense that Tom Allen is working on and is implementing. I have been reading that a lot of Clemson guys are talking about how easy it is for them to learn, and it is helping them play better so that they just go out there, they react, and they play football. That's how you improve to me, and that's why I'm willing to bet on them being the number 2 seed and getting there. They're plus 1,100 on FanDuel, by the way, to win a national championship.
And it ain't got nothing to do with you getting blown off the football. It doesn't. I'm sorry. You can disagree with that, but you'd be wrong. It doesn't. Now, I do think offensively, from a pass game situation, I think a lot of people look at their front seven and say that's where it's going to make the biggest jump. I don't know if I agree with that. Joe, they might have 3 first-round wide receivers. They very well may. I mean, that's where I'm starting to be like, all right, if Klubnik is who we think he's going to be, with 3 potential first-round dudes, shit. Good luck. Good luck.
This is not to spend too much time on Clemson, but this is the biggest part about this is there's a lot of quarterbacks this year that people are projecting are going to take huge leaps. He's, frankly, the only one that actually stepped up and made big plays late in games like he did in the Texas game. Drew Allard does not have that on film. He doesn't. I would like people to point that out to me, and don't pull up the USC game where he threw 3 interceptions. Klubnik stepped up when he needed to.
I'd also just make one little bone on that. He ain't ever had a receiver like Wesco and Williams and the boys either until now.
He had Tyler Warren.
That's a tight end. All right, Joe, pick apart what you think on mine that you want to discuss here.
I know I'm being a pain in the ass, but
here comes LSU.
No, it has nothing to do with LSU. I'm actually.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I might revisit that in a second. My problem is you putting 2 Big 12 teams in here. I think that you and I were talking about this pre-show. I can't buy in with all of the tough resumes and quality resumes that we could see this year if there are enough 10-2 teams we will not get 2 Big 12 teams in. We won't. If there would have to be 2 11-1 Big 12 teams. So I'm strongly against that.
No, I don't completely disagree. I kind of did that because I was just.
Why do you hate Miami? That's the better question. That's the.
Yeah. So if you want to get to Miami, let's go to Miami. Okay. The thing with Miami is it's not for me that they don't have talent. It's not for me that I don't think that they don't have a quarterback that can get them there. It has nothing to do with their offensive line, defensive line. It has nothing to do with bringing in all those DBs. Can I see Mario get there? Before I keep putting him in the playoff mix, can I see him actually win the big games? Can I? Because until we get to that, Joe, we have done this for everybody, literally everybody, whether it be Ryan Day, whether it be Kirby Smart early, whether it be Dabo over the last couple of years. We do this for everybody. Comes to Cristobal, oh, Blake's a hater. Blake's a hater. No, I'm not a hater. Can I see you get there? Because you had by far the best offense in the ACC a year ago, by far. Wasn't close. And you still found ways to lose. Are you going to find ways to lose this time? If I'm not playing around, Texas Tech has more talent than everybody on their schedule. And Joe, quite honestly, I think that you could be in a situation with the Big 12. Here's a hot take. Both of them could be 11-1, 12-1 going into this thing too. So you get to a place where, are you really going to leave out, after what you did with SMU a season ago, are you going to leave out a 12-1, 11-1 Texas Tech or a 12-1 Arizona State for a 10-2, 9-3 Miami team? No, I don't think they will. I legitimately don't think that they will. Because I know Miami's going to have a tougher schedule. I get it. They got Notre Dame, and they got to go through the ACC. But the bottom line remains is, Joe, I think that in the Big 12, there legitimately could be a couple of 11-win teams, and we're sitting there at the end and be like, you're going to kick Texas Tech out because they lost a 3-point game in the championship game? Are we going to do that?
Okay, here's my problem with the logic that you're bringing up, because it's fair to say with any coach in the playoff mix, we need to see said player or said coach rather accomplish, pulling off a big victory in a season where they're going to face Clemson in the ACC championship game, likely based on my projection that I'm putting out there with this, and they would probably lose to Notre Dame in this circumstance. I'm effectively projecting that they go 11-1 in the regular season, lose to Notre Dame, and then lose to Clemson in the ACC championship game, and that gets them into the playoff. He does tend to drop stupid games that he is not supposed to. But your logic that you just put out there of you need to see him win the big game, I'm sorry to do this to you, Blake, but Brian Kelly has just as much of an issue of getting past big opponents. He beat Bama a couple years ago. I get that. That was a huge victory for LSU recently and for Brian Kelly building a foundation at LSU. But I feel like recently, especially, that Brian Kelly has faltered in areas where he needs to step up and he needs to coach in these big games. They could be in Alabama at home this year.
A Final Four playoff game too. I've also seen him. Hold on. I've also seen him in a national title, and I've also seen him in 2 playoff games too.
That was before the expanded playoff when Notre Dame had favorable schedules.
And your point, he's never been to the playoff. The year that he could have gotten to the playoff, he lost to a 6-6 Bo Nix team. Yeah, you want to check it? It was 2019.
Yeah, right.
So don't come at me and talk about Brian Kelly when he's literally got more accomplishments at LSU than what arguably, legitimately, that Cristobal has in his career.
Brian Kelly's been coaching. Brian Kelly's been coaching longer. Of course, he's going to have gotten there.
6 years. Let's go the last 6 years. You missed a playoff because you lost to a 6-6 Auburn team, and you're accusing me of saying that he hadn't won the big one.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm not accusing you of anything, to be clear. But But Blake, can we acknowledge the missteps here by Brian Kelly already at LSU? Forget Notre Dame for a second here.
There's a whole channel called AYS of talking about his missteps if you want to go listen to it.
But he had the Heisman Trophy winner and second overall pick and didn't get to the playoff. Last year, he should have gotten to the playoff.
Funny you say that. Cristobal had a top 5 pick in a weaker conference in the SEC and then got beat by a team that went 6-6 in said conference and couldn't do shit with it.
I'm not disagreeing with you. And to be perfectly clear, I am not stating that Brian Kelly is a worse coach than Mario Cristobal. Not what I'm stating. I am merely stating that if we're willing to hope that Brian Kelly, which I projected on mine, by the way, I projected on mine that Brian Kelly gets over the hump this year. He gets through all the adversity. He gets to the playoff. He's capable of winning playoff games this year. That stuff I'm not disagreeing with. But my whole premise that I'm arguing with you is if we're willing to look past the missteps and the failures of Brian Kelly and project to him succeed, I think it's only fair to do the same thing for Mario Cristobal. Brian Kelly, I'm not saying that Brian Kelly is less accomplished than Mario. That's not what I'm saying. I'm merely pointing out that he is also fit into that same bucket of coaches that have struggled at times.
I have them losing to Florida, Notre Dame, and then potentially Clemson. And I don't think a 3-loss team gets in over Texas Tech or Arizona State.
That I don't disagree with.
Okay, that's why they're out. So you're talking about Florida, and you thought that you almost put Florida in here. Okay, if that's the case, then if that's remotely the case, then Florida is going to beat them. If you believe that, so. Listen, I'm they got question marks too. I'm just rolling with the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Joey McGuire, send the check. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Let's get to yours right here. I got to bring up, speaking of
shout out Toledo, by the way. Shout out Toledo.
Yes, shout out Toledo. We don't have them going past the first round. Joe, I'm assuming here when you have Texas and Georgia 1-4, it's the same thing that I do, but in reverse order. We both have them playing each other 3 times. How do you – I think a lot of people have Georgia and Texas in the SEC pretty much going in a 3-game battle, battling this thing out. I mean, you just got Texas winning the SEC championship. You got them beating them into the playoff. Do you think that Texas is going to overcome that and beat Georgia 2 out of 3 this season after last year – we had Georgia that did the opposite and beat them twice?
I really do think so. And as I said in my opening statement here, they both have equally talented rosters. But if I had to establish who has the edge over these very, very similar balanced rosters that are on this, like they've got blue chip talent across the board, I got to go with the team that has the more dynamic quarterback. I think Gunnar Stockton's going to be great. I've said that a million times over, but I'm buying into Arch. I've said this a ton. I am completely blindly buying into Arch Manning. I think that he is going to be tremendous this year. And I think he's going to be the driving force for why they win a national championship because he's got so much around him. He would need to be, in my eyes, abysmal for him to not step up and to have a tremendous first year as a starter. By the way, to kind of what you just said with the scheduling, I tried a million different ways to project a world where they do not play each other 3 times, but that is going to be potentially one of the weirdest outcomes that we see is if Texas does play Georgia 3 times on the way to a national championship.
It would mean it would have to mean a team like LSU or Alabama who doesn't play Texas does something, and because of the power ranking that they do in the tiebreakers in the SEC, that one of those teams gets in and the other does not. You would have to have somewhat, I don't want to say a 3-way tie, but you would have to have one of those 2 teams at the top or 3-4, however it shakes out, that do not play Texas, because an LSU doesn't play Georgia, but Alabama and Georgia do play one another. Something like that would have to happen for them not to play 3 times. I think it's a little bit more simpler. We can make it that way, okay, because of the tiebreaker and all that kind of thing that they enacted during the playoff and things like that. This is what I've been saying all offseason. I feel like I'm a broken record. I need to see Texas do it. It's kind of like the thing with Georgia and Bama. If I had Georgia going 11-1 this year, it's them losing to Bama. because for whatever reason they got their number. For whatever reason that is. I need to see. I have a situation right now. I understand that Georgia is young. I know they got a lot of personnel turnover. But, Joe, all those depth pieces that played defensively last year were the guys that came in when those injuries happened and they played a lot. I know Kirby has talked about youth. If they stay healthy, I think that they still can do it. I saw the worst Georgia team that I've seen in the last 5 years last season. The worst. I don't think it's remotely close. It was the worst. And I don't think all those things are going to compile. I don't think Gunnar Stockton has 12 interceptions like Carson Beck did. And I think that benefits them greatly. I do think ultimately, I think they're going to run the football more effectively. I think they're going to figure it out. I got to see Texas do it. Now, on the opposite side of that, Joe, for me, I will say this, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek in a way, but then it's kind of talking out both sides of your mouth. I think Texas is the most talented roster in the country. I think their front seven is the most talented in the country. The thing that I am interested about is you're replacing two DBs that had 10 total interceptions combined, in Makuba and Barron. It's a lot to replace, Joe. It's a lot to we keep talking about their front seven. I'm with you. If there's one of these pass-happy teams that can get to them, I think they can get got. I think they can get got. Georgia's not really that, right? Like, I don't know. But can Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, Bell, Delp, Lucky, can those guys make more of an impact than maybe they did a season ago? Very well likely could. I still think Georgia can rebound here. Again, their worst season, they still won the SEC. Here's the final thing I'd say with Georgia, okay? And it doesn't really play into the playoff, but it plays into my seeding in them at 1. I could see a world where they split the first two of these. Joe, I'm having a very hard time right now, very hard, of teams going into Athens and beating them. I have a very tough time seeing that. Joe, they've been one of the most dominant home teams in the last decade. And I'm supposed to come out here and say that they're going to start losing 2 or 3 games and not win the SEC? I can't do that. Texas is talented enough to be the team that clips them. The one thing I want to say that I'm not there yet as well, I think Arch Manning's very talented. I need to see him go on the road in some of these games and win these games, because I know that he went up against Mississippi State. I know he went up against ULM. But, Joe, if he has mistakes there, he's going to have mistakes against Athens in his first year of starting. I think he's going to be, when he comes out, the number 1 overall pick, Heisman Trophy caliber. But at the end of the day in all of this, I need to see him go on the road and win.
Well, what I'm kind of projecting here, and this is going to require, I think that the committee is going to operate this way because they tend to operate this way. There's a lot of weight in what the SEC does. I think that with all the complaining this past year, they're going to consider a lot more weight in the SEC in their decision-making. I think that Texas loses to Georgia in the regular season and then beats them in the SEC championship game. And I think, to your point, it is going to be a really difficult road test for him to come in to win a national title, or sorry, to come in and beat Georgia. I don't know why I said that. To come in and beat Georgia in Athens. It's going to be really difficult.
Yes.
But at the same time, Gunnar Stockton's also in his first year starting. And I think that it would actually be to Texas's benefit if they do not beat them the first time, because, as we say a million times over on this show, it's really hard to beat a good team twice.
Very true.
To your benefit, which they failed to do last year. I would be stunned if they lost to them 2 times in a row and they lost to him in the SEC championship game, which would completely change my projection of my bracket here. At a certain point, they need to steal a game, and I think that they need the game that they would steal against them would be in that SEC championship. The last part here, I get that they're losing Makuba and Jahdae Barron, but they are still incredibly, incredibly well recruited at corner, including Malik Muhammad, who is one of the best returning corners in college football.
Agreed.
So I'm giving a little bit of faith there that they're going to be fine, because this is my whole point with this. They're the best recruited roster in college football. And that is why they are as loaded as they are, and why a lot of people are projecting them to do as good as they're going to.
Joe, I agree with you. Listen, don't get what I'm saying twisted.
I know.
I mean, listen, they are the most, in my opinion, they might be the most talented roster in the country. Joe, I want to get back. I want to get to this before we kind of transition here. I have Georgia playing Penn State. You have Penn State. Where do you have them? You have them
losing to Alabama is the
losing
3
to
seed.
Alabama. Okay. Let's get to Penn State. I think that they're also talented enough to get there. I don't know if they're talented enough to win it. You got them losing to Alabama. Your thoughts about Penn State?
I'm going to get yelled at by Penn State fans for this. Same logic that you just applied here with Mario Cristobal, but I think it's very different, because the conversation and the debate that we were just having was about, can Mario even get to the playoff? I think that James Franklin gets over the hump, wins the Big Ten this year. Everybody's going to be feeling really high. They're going to be feeling really great. This roster, to your point, is absolutely gifted to go on a run and to reach the national championship, which you had projected in yours. But I feel like Kalen DeBoer in this specific matchup would be the worst possible draw for them to get. This was my one upset that I wanted to go with, because you're taking Kalen DeBoer facing off a guy who's already gone to the playoff, won playoff games against an SEC caliber roster when he beat Texas a couple of years ago, and he's seen those bullets, and he survived through the SEC schedule this year. That would be the last thing that James Franklin wants to see, because that team, I think, could potentially, that defense could get caught off guard, and they could end up winning that ball game on a neutral site. So that's the big thing for me, is a team like Alabama would be an awful draw. They would need to get a favorable matchup in order to get there.
I'm pushing my chips in on Allar and the receivers, and Singleton and that offense. Second year on Kotelnicki. I'm doing something that I did a couple of seasons ago with them, thinking that they would get over the hump. This is the year that, and I teetered with it. I didn't go all in. I'm going all in right now, because I here's what I want. I feel like I've seen a kid in Drew Allar that everybody's blamed. I'm not saying you, Joe, but just natural college football fans. They have blamed him. He could not get a receiver open in the Notre Dame game to save his life, and we blamed him as college football fans. Joe, I don't think people understand the weapons that now he has a receiver. Blake, he had Tyler Warren. Yeah, he had a big body tight end that a lot of teams bracketed in a lot of situations. What are you going to do now if you double one of those dudes and you try to spread the field out, and now you got a running game with 5 guys that can be there? Joe, I got to be real honest with you. Shit. All right. You're going to have to go out of that box against them. They're a matchup nightmare offensively if they hit on the cylinder of what I think they can do. If you go man-to-man on them now with Trevor Pena and the boys, I think I like Kyron Hudson. If you do that and what you did to them a year ago, and you leave that box 5, 6 guys in there, they're going to splatter that ass in the running game. I'm putting all my chips in, brother. I'm putting my chips in.
I'm sorry, Blake. You're going to lose a lot of money if you're putting your chips in.
I'm putting my chips in.
Because there's 2 major contingencies that I'm so fearful of. I have to bet on James Franklin to prepare his team to win against a premier opponent. They have never finished in those situations. Last year specifically, they couldn't beat Ohio State late in the game despite being positioned to win it. They couldn't beat Notre Dame despite running all over Notre Dame's talented defense. They could not get it done. They had every reason to win the ball game because they overthought it. Notre Dame couldn't tackle Nick Singleton. And for some reason, you do have, and you're forcing Drew Allar into those situations where he's throwing the ball. Why even try to throw the ball when Notre Dame could not tackle Nick Singleton? Notre Dame loses that game if they didn't overthink that and they leaned on him. The other part about this, I think Drew Allar is a really gifted young man, and I think that he's got a lot to improve upon, but I really don't love his decision-making at times. I think that he is one of the weaker top quarterbacks that we talk about for decision-making that is required to win a national title. He just doesn't have it for me. He has enough decision-making to win the Big Ten and for them to win big games this year and to win a couple of playoff games. But he does not have that innate killer instinct that I look for in a guy that is going to step up to the plate in a national championship setting. Look at the way that he played against SMU. Look at the way that he played against Boise State before that, and then eventually the Notre Dame game. That's where my pause is.
Again, you just made thank you for making my point. Joe, are they more talented offensively at receiver than they were a year ago?
They are.
Do they have offensive linemen, 4 of the 5 coming back?
They do.
Do they have 2 running backs?
All these things are true.
Okay.
Then where's the next? Make the decisions, though. He has to make those decisions.
Joe, decisions are very easily made when you got a dude like Malik Neighbors or whatever, who was the last Heisman Trophy quarterback. I'm thinking Malik, who was before that? Bryce Young had Humst. I mean, it's very easy to make decisions when you got one-on-one coverage with bona fide dudes. Joe, they could not get separation. Let's pop on. You know what? This is what we're going to do on Saturday. When you and I ain't doing shit, we're going to go back and rewatch the game, you and I. And
I've rewatched that game like 4 times.
Okay, I've watched every rep by the wide receivers and watch them get stuck on white on rice in a snowstorm on a paper plate in the middle of
Old Miss brought one of those guys in, and I believe he's a projected starter at the current moment.
They also brought in Juice Wells, and he only caught 30 passes in 2 seasons.
If he's good enough to start in the SEC, then it shouldn't have been a big deal.
They upgraded with Trevor Pena alone. I saw Trevor Pena do stuff to first-round corners that, that guy's the first-round corner. And Pena bent him over and smacked that ass.
But the gap between what it was last year and what it is this upcoming year, it is larger. It's a lot more better, more impactful. It's a lot more dynamic. It's more diverse, different types of guys that you can throw to. But it isn't so much so that it fixes the mistakes that Drew Aller makes in his decision-making. He makes a lot of mistakes.
He's in a 2-minute warning situation against Notre Dame, and the receiver couldn't get separation, and y'all are blaming him for that. You can't say that they can't get It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard from people. They can't get separation, but then they're not making plays. He's not calling the plays. He's not putting himself in those situations.
I know that he's not putting himself in those situations. That to me is a Kotelnicki James Franklin issue that led to that point where they could have sealed the game and pulled away much earlier, but they made a bunch of coaching decision errors. But I also have a game where he threw 3 interceptions against USC.
Fair.
It was a bad secondary, very mediocre secondary.
I saw Arch Manning, who you're high on, throw 2 interceptions against ULM.
One player is a 5th-year player. I believe Drew Aller is a 5th-year player, and Arch has played 2 games.
Okay, but you can't say that one guy's better than the other when literally you had Arch, who's a first-time starter, and you're projecting something for him, but you can't, now that a guy's got weapons, now not project for the other dude.
Some guys have it, some guys don't. It's hard. It's a thing that's hard to describe. We have a super chat from Elks.
I see it. Anything else you want to? Anything you want to else get to this?
Well, Alex is criticizing my Ohio State placement, so I'd really love to address this.
Yes, Joe says that about Arch and what's around him, but Ohio State at 9, losing round 1 with more rounds saying. Joe is just an Ohio State hater.
First of all, Julian saying, obviously he is Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, does not have more around him. Completely new running back room. CJ Donaldson's your best running back coming in this year, and he's average. He's a decent player. You have a deep, talented running back room at Texas that is 10 times better than what Ohio State has. The Texas defense, this is the whole talking point that I'm having. The Texas defense is incredibly loaded. Incredibly loaded. It has so much talent on that defense. There is a stark difference between Texas's defense and Ohio State's defense because all of the Ohio State top defensive linemen left and went to the NFL draft. And most of them got drafted pretty damn early. So what do we do? They're going to be a good team this year. They're going to be 10-2. But to expect them to win back-to-back national titles with that much of a hard reset, with 2 new coordinators, one guy who already got demoted, why are we making this jump that they have to be a top seeded team. It doesn't mean that I hate them. It means I'm being realistic.
They won a national title and they were the 8th seed. So how are you a hater?
That circumstance is so unique. And also, by the way, when they were the 8th seed, I would love to go back and listen to the clip where you and I said that despite them being the 8th seed, they might be in the best position.
We picked them to win the national title.
Yeah. Whatever.
Anyway, we got
Thanks
some
for the super chat.